Bienvenidos a The Grateful Leader Podcast, donde hablamos de liderazgo, desarrollo de talento y cultura laboral para gente agradecida y con propósito, que quiere evolucionar el mundo laboral. Somos sus anfitriones, Gaby y Gerardo. Bienvenidos.
Welcome to the Grateful Leader Podcast, leadership, talent development, and workplace culture hacks for purposeful and grateful people who want to shift the workplace. We are your hosts, Gerardo and Gaby. Welcome.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Grateful Leader Podcast, where we unravel the intricacies of leadership in the corporate world. Today, I'm delighted to introduce our esteemed guest, Lala Elizondo. Lala, welcome. Lala.
Hi,
Lala.
Gaby.
Hello,
Yes.
hello.
Hi, nice to see you. Hi, Gerardo. Thanks for inviting me to your podcast.
Hello.
Very excited to have you in our podcast. Lala is not just a startup angel investor, but also a dedicated full-time real estate entrepreneur. She serves as the CEO and managing principal of Tule Capital, a real estate investment firm that has made substantial investments in more than 3,400 doors of multifamily assets across thriving markets in the US, including Texas, Arizona, and Florida. With over 15 years of experience in CPG and international business development, she has navigated the complexities of various startups, making her insights incredibly valuable. So welcome to the episode, Lala. And well, today we have a very special episode with you and Gerardo.
Thank you, Gaby. Thank you, Gaby and Lala. Thanks again for being here. Let's get started with a few of our questions because we have so many things to talk about. Lala, your journey in the startup world is really inspiring. Could you please tell us more and share with our audience how your past experiences, in different jobs have shaped your perspective on leadership and how it has evolved throughout your career, especially now that you are basically in the leadership seat?
Thank you, Gerardo. Thank you, Gaby. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to your space. Most recently, and it's interesting that you asked this question about the evolution, because I recall when I was in business school 12 or 13 years ago now, that, you had to sign up for the courses. And strangely enough, I recall that the HR class was the one that was left with open spaces, because everyone fought for their space in the top classes with the top professors, blah, blah. And I remember that I ended up taking the HR class because I had no other option, right? And at that time of my life, I had already worked in corporate. I worked for PepsiCo for many years. And then I actually remember this when I launched my first company, when I moved from the corporate world to the entrepreneurial world. And I was like, oh my God, now I see why I should have paid more attention to this class, because that is actually when I realized, it took me a long time, but the importance of the human development side of a company, right? So going back to your question about leadership, so in my corporate world, I was fortunate enough to work for multinational companies. I worked at PepsiCo, and then I worked at Pernod Ricard, which is also a global company. It was a French company, different than PepsiCo is an American company. So the culture is different. However, there, I followed the processes. They actually put me into this leadership management program for managers, given by Monterrey Tech. And, I just took it because I had to take it, but I didn't really give it the importance that I now understand it has. Because when I jumped into the entrepreneurial world, you can see that the importance that your company is your people, even if it's a team of 3 or 4 or 5 people. Normally, that's how it starts when you start a business. So for me, my views of leadership has changed over time, especially this change, this shift of work when I had more people under my responsibility when I was in the corporate world than at first when I launched my first company. However, the impact that I had as a leader with my team, my first 2 or 3 employees, was much more bigger than the impact that I had, I guess, on the corporate world. So this has transformed my vision, and also it has reshaped the way I think of how the resources should be applied within a company in terms of the people management.
Interesting. And I guess it's because when you launch this company you're talking about, you had that really, well, you had like a closer interaction with your employees, I guess, right? And,
Yes, and
it becomes more personal, maybe.
Yes, and especially because when you're launching a company, that was a traditional business. It was in the restaurant world. But still, the impact, the resources are really constrained, as when you're working in a big company and you're used to having everything at your hands, and you have a team that will help you with the numbers. You just get everything digest, and then you just make the decision. So you'll have a team that will help you with the HR stuff, and you'll have a team. So it's easier in that sense. And when you're launching any company, whether it's a startup or a traditional company, the resources are limited. And so you have to be really smart, and you have to make sure that you and your team are aligned, like in values and vision, because the impact of whatever they do is huge in a company, because it's a company of 3 or 4 people, right? So yeah.
Good. Yeah. Now, talking about that, of course, leadership differs, having a small business and working for like a big corporation. In your view, what are the unique challenges that CEOs face when leading a small company or a startup, and how do you navigate these challenges in your experience?
Yeah, thanks, Gerardo. Well, first of all, I've already mentioned the constraint of resources. So one way to just tackle that is like to prioritize the spending. I mean, on my second entrepreneurial venture, which is that actually was a startup, a tech startup, who evolved into another traditional business. And there, when COVID hit, this is like 8 years later after I was in the entrepreneurial world. One thing that helped us is, like, before COVID, the resources and the spending was more relaxed, and COVID made us become a more efficient company. So any startup has to be and has to operate in that way, because resources are constrained. So that's I guess that's the biggest challenge that a startup have. And the way to do it is just prioritize the spending, and also like leverage on freelancers, right? So that way, and that you have to do it since day one. You don't need COVID to use that strategy, right? Another challenge and that startups present is like the uncertainty. As a startup, you don't know. You always are operating in a highly uncertain environment, right? So any decision that you make is critical, right? So you gotta live with that, and you gotta embrace uncertainty, and you gotta have contingency plans instead, in case things don't work out, right? So that would be like another unique challenge. I'm not saying that big corporations don't have it, but again, it's a startup. The impact is big. And when you have uncertainty, you gotta know what your plan B will be, right? And then another big challenge within startups is a team, right? We've already mentioned how important are your team members, especially the first ones. But you gotta make sure that your culture is defined when you are hiring, because many people that you hire, probably they're gonna be able to get other, like the same job or with higher salary paid in a bigger corporation. So the only way to be able to keep the talent is to have them love the culture that you're creating and fall in love with your vision that you have as a leader, right? So especially in a small company, this is so important, because if not tomorrow, next month, or whenever there's always going to be someone that can pay more for the talent, but there's not always going to be someone that has a culture that you are fostering within your organization. So I believe that the culture and team building, it's another huge challenge that startups have, and especially when they are starting to do that scaling up, right? So I think that's another huge huge challenge. So just summing up, I said the resources, the vision, and the other one would be the uncertainty. Those three are huge challenges that the company culture, restraint of resources, and uncertainty and risk management.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, great examples, by the way. And I agree, especially with the culture one. And I know that Gabby also agrees about that, because we talk about culture all the time in this podcast, and with an HR group that we have, which is called the HR Tribe, by the way. But anyhow, you already mentioned culture. Now, we've seen that startups usually prefer to have a flat organizational structure, and this culture of collaboration or hands-on work, let's say. How do you balance the need for, to have a hierarchy and decision-making authority at the same time, with fostering a culture of innovation?
That's very interesting, because again, you want a flat organization because of you want a lean organization, an organization that is able to confront the challenges that competition or the market or whatever we talked about, the changes that they can be confronted. So if you have an organization that's stiff and that it's not built to adapt to these challenges, the most likely common result would be, the organization to get broke. That's why it's important to have this lean and not have like a lot of hierarchy across the organization. So I guess I think one important thing would be the empowerment of the employees. It's important and again, it's easier said than done, but it's important that whenever, like, so in this second startup or company that I built along with my two business partners, it's been growing now, and so we have more people. Right now we're about 40 people in the company, and so as it grows, it's a challenge to have them understand that we want them to make decisions, and we want them, because they are the ones that are with the clients, and they're the ones that are going to be able to see opportunities, right? Also us, but if they're on their daily lives, they are with people, they will see opportunities. But it's important for us to let them know that these opportunities that they see, that they have a space within the organization to voice out these opportunities. But how do you do this? So we try to follow up. My husband always teases, because he said, like, we treat our organization as if it was like a huge thing. It's just because me and my partners, the three of us come from like big organizations. So we've always had like this. So we have an onboarding process, which from each stylist that comes into this second company is called Glam Express. So each stylist that comes in on board, our CEO, Marisela, she's my business partner. So there's like an onboarding process, and she goes personally to that onboarding process. We have the general managers. We have this brochure with all they have to know about the company. But Marisela, within the values of the company, is having the stylist understand that their opinion is valuable and that we want them to innovate within our process. So that's something that we try to make. So empowering your team is important, not just by saying it, but actually putting it to work, right? So so that's one thing. The other thing about having a low hierarchy, not having a lot of steps, is the defining the roles and responsibilities. For some time we had trouble. We had this person that had like two roles, like it was an operational role and also was doing an administrative role. So in that case, we did that because we didn't have the money to pay for two different roles. But now that the company, but we were very clear that we needed those roles to be separated. So now that we could grow a little bit and we had a little bit of less constraint of money, so we were able to hire that other role. But the important part here was to tell everyone in the team what are the challenges, what are the responsibilities of each person within the organization, right? So that way, when someone has a problem or when someone has something to say, they know who they have to attend to. And if they mess it up, or because that's another thing, the empowering people, like if they mess it up or like they did something that wasn't right, we always say, like, we prefer for you, and we tell this to everyone, for you to just make a mistake than just not to do anything, right? That's something that, well, even here, like at Tule Capital, my current company, I have two people in El Salvador, and we can talk later about the remote work, and someone in Monterrey. And I always I had a meeting with her this morning, like, Andrea, just go ahead and do it. If I don't like it, I'll tell you. I mean, there's nothing, unless, if there's something very specific that you don't want that person to do, like, just,
Sure.
be clear about that. But if not, I prefer to just let the people make the decisions, and almost everything can be fixed, right? So that's my point of view on that. And especially, again, with in a small organization with a constrained budget, you gotta give people the tools and the power. So the power to just make their own decisions and take ownership of their roles, because you cannot be micromanaging each of the persons, because then you wouldn't have time to be leading the organization.
Right. Yeah. Well, I really like that. The empowerment part, because you just said it right now. You have to, as a leader, you have to focus on other things and let people do this thing. That's why you hire them, right? So, Gabby, let's continue with you. I know we have more questions.
Yes, I've been loving everything that Lala has said so far, because she is thinking, even when she starts a company, she has this broad vision and she shares that vision with everybody. So even if you're small, implementing onboarding process and a job description, everything helps. And I like to ask questions about challenges, more questions about challenges. For example, we know startups are changing constantly. Everything changes. You're making decisions. One day you decide one thing, and then maybe 2 days after, you change the direction, or something changes, the market changes. It's not the same having a culture, as you mentioned earlier, culture and values of having or working at 5 people, and then culture at 25 people and culture at 100 people. So my question for you is, how can leaders maintain their vision and adapt to these changes without losing the company values and culture and mission?
I would say that it is a big challenge, but a way to get it over with, or to confront that challenge, that would be a better word, would be involving the team. Like in our case, we have 4 branches in that company I'm talking to you about, and we always, when we have important decisions to make, even where it's to cut people, like when COVID hit, or to open a new branch, so we explain them the challenges that we're facing. Like for us, it was like, we need to open a new branch because now we have a bigger structure. When I left the company on the operation side, I'm still part owner, we needed to hire more people And we needed so in order for that to be feasible economically, we needed more branches, so that, for economies of scale, so that we could have, because our vision is not only to have only 2 or 3 or 4 branches. We want to solve an actual problem for women that don't have time to receive beauty services, right? Because that's that company about. But we communicate this vision to our main leadership. So to our 4 branch leaders and to an operations leader. And when they understand the vision, and we involve them in that decision, right? So when you are involving them and you're having your team being part of the answer, or even if possible, participate in the mission rewriting or in the vision that you have, that actually makes the team feel more recognized, important, or the person, and they feel part of something, part of building something. So also another thing that's also important is that when they are confronted with a challenge, they will know the vision, the mission by heart. And as I said, the rules, you don't really need to understand the rules, but if you know the vision of the company, you will know how to respond when you're confronted in a situation. So if you have a client that has this event or whatever, and has a situation that you need to someone burn their hair or whatever. So if you know that our mission as a company is to go here, with your intelligence, you will know how you have to respond to live up to that mission, right? But it's hard to have your top management or to all the people know it by heart if you don't involve them in that, right? So, and you also have to keep reminding them about this, right? So answering your question, how do you maintain your vision? I would say it's involve the team when you are developing the vision, if there's a change. Also, when you're when the market changes, I always like to talk about COVID, because that was a sudden change for many companies. So at that moment of time, our thing was, our resources are really constrained, so the priority is this and this, and we have to say no. And we have to focus on our core thing, because if we want to focus on everything, we won't be able to have the resources to attend everything. But the leaders knew that, right? So that way they knew how to answer. And if that meant losing clients, we were okay with that. But at that moment of time, that was the response that people needed to take, right? So yes, involving your team, revisit your mission depending on the time of where you are in the company, and communicate the core values and the mission clearly within your team.
Yeah, it makes sense. And a lot of companies, they struggle communicating the changes or this change management. They struggle communicating these goals or cascading the goals to everybody in the company. So that's a great idea. Another question for you, it's it's about budget. You mentioned a few times that startups, they don't have a lot of budget, so they frequently, they have limited resources or budget. So how can leaders at a startup can motivate and empower their staff, even when financial incentives may not be as competitive as in a big company?
How can leaders empower their staff?
So how can you empower them if we cannot give promotions and salary increases all the time?
I mean, as I said, the vision is super important. Having them giving them the power of making decisions, giving them resources. Sometimes it's hard to give them there's so much things that you can give to a team member other than salary. So even within the networks, for example, if the person that I have helping me with the marketing in Tule Capital, if I have access to certain networks or certain courses, I get her involved in that, and that's a value that I'm giving to her, right? So the training is important for people, so that will keep them motivated. I feel that every human being wants to feel that they're growing at some point. So giving them access to courses or training is super valuable and super important. Sometimes this doesn't necessarily have to mean spending. Sometimes yes, and you have to understand that it's important to spend on the employee training, but not necessarily. Sometimes you can get your suppliers or your providers to pay for that training, right? And it's very common. It depends on the industry that you are into. Or if you as a leader are taking this leadership course, ask always, and you're already investing in that, ask if you can bring in some people from your team into that leadership course, right? So there's some creative ways that you can keep the people motivated, right? Also, something like we do also is we within the team, you can create the spaces for the team members to collaborate and to actually like a formal space for one team member show another team member something of what they are doing. And that's another way that within the talent that you have in the organization, having them share that talent and share that skills, that's a way of upskilling people, right, within your organization. It doesn't cost you anymore, it's a time, right? But at the end of the day, it is important to think about how people are, because a company is made out of the people that form it. And if you don't spend the time necessary to see how your employees are, your team members are, and how you can make them grow as individuals, it'll backfire, right, within your company.
I was going to ask you, that was going to be my next question. So how startups invest in their leaders, but you already answered. So yes, not everything is about money.
Not everything is about money, actually. No, I think the vision, that team, that having activities like right now with remote work, it's sometimes more challenging, because but you it's still good to have like as practice, if all your employees are in different areas, to have at least once a week or once every 2 weeks, everyone connect, even virtually, and share something not related to your work. That way people can create connections between them. I mean, there's so many tools right now. I mean, there's Slack, there's WhatsApp groups. Sometimes people don't like them, but sometimes it's a good way to people to communicate easily between each other. So yes, it is super important to find these ways to foster communication, even if you are remote, but to find a way, if possible, like for example, if you're in different parts of the world, to find at least to like once a year make like a company retreat or something that will help build this team building and this strong relationship to the brand. And it pays off. It's it might at the beginning, with when there's a constraint, you don't think, but it really pays up. It pays up because people work in a more happy way, right?
Exactly. And my last question for you is, well, we were talking about culture. So do you have any more tips on how to keep nurturing that culture in the long term for the success of a startup?
Well, again, I feel innovation is important. We haven't mentioned innovation. It's something that I didn't mention. And I think every company has to include the innovation part within, and it has to do with empowering, because the innovation normally doesn't have to come from the leadership, from the formal leadership team. You have to foster that innovation within everyone. I think it's super important for the long-term success. Collaboration, maybe prepare some special problems, or have people collaborate within departments, even though they don't work. Like I like to do in this second company. I like to I use when I operate, I like to do rotations, so people would know between each other, between the branches. Sometimes they wouldn't like it because you're taking them out of their comfort zone, but it's good because also it helps you know how the work climate is within a branch. Like if you have a company that has different branches, if you take someone from another branch and put it in a different branch, like for a week or 2 weeks, it gives you a lot of information about how things are moving there, like informally, but you have to be with your eyes open. So that's another way of promoting like collaboration, right? And I mean, I guess at the end of the day, having your values and your vision communicated will and letting your employees know that they can make decisions, and if they are confronted with a challenge, just look at that vision and do what they think aligns more to that vision. That you are like, you know, kind of like bulletproof about what they, and you're empowering people to make mistakes, but to take action instead of just being like stiff and not moving, right?
A lot of good tips like autonomy and empowerment. I love it. Share vision and yeah, cascading goals. Thank you so much, Lala. Gerardo.
Thank you, Lala, really for this brief but really thoughtful conversation. I think that the audience will get really nice insights for, you know, their businesses, their startups, or even if they're thinking about, you know, becoming a better leader at a company. I think what you mentioned about culture, empowering others, like we repeated several times during the conversation, it's essential to have a successful and happy team, because at the end it's about the people, not only the money, right?
Yeah, something I want to add, you said a happy team, and if there's someone that's unhappy for any reason, just make them like tell you, if someone's unhappy for some reason, it's the chances are someone else will be unhappy for that same reason too. So be open to criticism in a good way. Don't only give feedback to your team, but foster the moment so you can receive feedback and receive it in a good way with an open mind, right? And you have to lead by example, because it sounds, all this sounds beautiful, but if you don't actually lead by the example, everything goes to the trash. It's like being a parent. I'm a mom of 3, and I can tell my kids, like, you know, pick up your things and whatever. But if I have my things sold, you know, a mess or whatever, just maybe it's a bad example, but they won't do it, right? So I feel that the leading by the example is it's key in this world.
Totally. Yeah. Well, muchas gracias, Lala, again, and to our audience as well. Thank you so much. And until next time, stay grateful and lead on. Thank you, Gabi. Thank you, Lala.
De nada. Thanks, Gerardo. Gracias, Gabi.
Thank you.
Take care.